All right, we made it. We're here. The last video in my 24-hour marathon of videos for you. This last one's going to cover how we simplify the process of swapping a 1 gig transceiver for a 10 gig transceiver. It was mentioned to me that this is a manual process. You can't just pull the transceiver out and plug it in. You've got to redo the configuration. Yeah, that could be a headache. There's a couple different ways that we can do this and eliminate the need entirely to create that new interface or greatly reduce the amount of time it takes to create the new interface. So I'll go through some of those techniques here. For the purpose of this lab environment, I'm going to be using the RE from the virtual chassis I built in the earlier videos. And I'll be using an EX2300 mostly because it's powered up and has a 10 gig, 1 gig, 10 gig SFP slot in it. We're starting with our 1 gig transceivers, and we're also going to start by just looking at those transceivers. I already recorded this, but I realized when I paused it to plug the cable in that I had been muted, so the link's already up. Originally it was down. I was going to show, oh, look, now it's up. I think you could probably take my word for it that the link was down and then came up. Okay. So if you want to verify that you've got a transceiver plugged in, I mean, you could do the show interfaces command. It's just a lot of scrolling. So I like to do show chassis hardware. Since we're on the EX 4300, actually, no, I'm sorry. This is the 2300. My bad. I can see the transceiver that I have here. It's an SFP-SX 1 gig optical, and pick one. And I can switch over to the EX4300, run the same command. This can be a bit confusing. I don't like it, but it is really the only way to do it. You've got pick 0 is the 48 ports of copper, and pick 1 is the 4x40 interfaces that are on the back of the box. So when you plug a card in on the front, it's pick 2, which means that on the front, you've got pick 0 and you've got pick 2. Now, it's confusing on the surface, but it makes sense because most of these switches are probably going to be deployed without, a card in them. And if that's the case, then it's pick 0 and pick 1. That's it. So I get it, but still, it's like, why? They're right next to each other. It should be 0 and 1. Anyway. So here we can see that I've got the 4x10, 4x110 card that you use plugged into this EX4300, as well as the SFP SX module, 1 gig. This is already up. Show interface is terse. I can do a GE000, and we can see that the state is up. Oh, of course it is. When you look at the wrong interface, 20. That's up as well. Great. So we got our link. It's 1 gig. This is not a complex configuration. Edit interfaces, GE-0/do/0. I doubt I have any config here. Oh, wait, I do, because this is pre-configured for you. So I need to take this configuration and I need to mirror it on the other side. And we'll just do that so we have something that we can play with. Now, the easiest way for me to do that is going to be to copy this out using set commands. So I can do show display set. And I'll just grab all this and copy it. And then I'll paste it over here. And then I will change this right here so that it says 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Now, in order for this to work correctly, oh man, I'm gonna have to create the VLANs too. Hang on, I'm gonna pause the video and I'm gonna do all this. I don't need to hold you hostage while I do it. When I come back, I'll have a workable trunk config on both sides of this to play with. All right, there we go. So now we've got a trunk on either end of this link. It's identical, but it'll work for our purposes. So now let's start talking about what our options are for, let me clean the screen up a little bit, what our options are for adding a 10 gig transceiver. So first we can delete the existing interface and we can type it all back in. That would involve taking that. Essentially, you could either output the set commands and then go in and manually change the where it says the GE here, and you could just change it to XE and then paste it back in. Or you could, leave it kind of on the screen there and then kind of copy it into a new configuration. Now, don't do that. That's going to take too long. That's why I wrote boo. The first technique is to copy and paste it. I can do copy GE00020 to XE-020. Oh, it already exists. Show XE-020. Well, let's delete that. Delete. This is just default configuration that's on the switch when it ships. So we'll delete that so that we can actually overwrite it, and then we'll copy. And now if we do a show GE-020, and then the same thing with an XC, they should look exactly the same. This is a perfectly valid configuration. Remember, the configuration overlays onto the hardware. So even if you have what appears to be conflicting configuration, because this is, for the same port and the same PIC, since it's two different port speeds, the only one that's going to apply is the one that actually is relevant to the speed of the interface that's plugged in. So if you have a 1 gig interface plugged in, it'll use GE. And if you have a 10 gig interface plugged in, it'll use XC. Just as simple as that. And I'll show that in practice here by committing this. And I've got to do the same to my other box. Bigger, edit interfaces, copy GE-010 to XE-010. Might give me the same error. Okay, so same reason. It's just the default configuration. This is why I'm fond of deleting the interfaces part of the configuration whenever I get a new switch, so I don't have to deal with all that pre-configured stuff. So this should look the same now. Show GE-010 and essentially the same as we had before. Great. So on top, hit quit. And let's see, commit succeeds. Where's the P? Oh, that's interesting. Let's ignore that for now. Oh, wait. We want to exceed 0, 0. Should still show us down. Oh, actually not found because I haven't plugged in the transceiver. And that is the case. If it says it's not found, it's because the transceiver that's plugged in is a GE, not an XE. I can just as easily replace this with a G and it'll show me that it's there. And if I go back to an X, it'll show me that it isn't. So I'm going to pause this and I'm going to go swap the transceivers. Whoops. That explains that other message. I must have bumped the USB stick there. I'll go pull that out just so it doesn't give us more error messages. So now when I look at this, I can see that it's up. And if I were to look at the GE, it would say it's not found. So as you can see, having the same configuration defined for both 1 gig and 10 gig in the configuration is A-OK, not a problem. So let's get back in. There's another way that we can do this as well. Edit interfaces, delete XE020. You can copy, like I did, or we can actually just rename it. I can say rename GE020 if you don't want to leave the 1 gig configuration behind to XE-020. And now I won't see this interface, and I will see this one. And I can commit that, and it's going to have the same net effect. So, but for the sake of templating, if that's what you're doing, then I would say you just have both. So that covers Control-C, Control-V, and Control-X, Control-V over here. Pre-configured is sort of the templating side of this. It's kind of the Control-C, Control-V, where you would actually have both at the same time. So again, just to show you, you would have both this configuration and this configuration pre-configured, and that would just allow you to use either one depending on what the transceiver was. And then we have an interface range, and we can essentially take this configuration here and we can create an interface range and then apply it to those interfaces. So I'll do that now. We'll name it, let's just name it 10G. So edit interfaces, edit interface range, 10G. You can obviously name this whatever you want. Oh, I can't start it with a, about 10G, like that. So we would take that same configuration we have there. I'm going to leave the description out because I don't want to type it out. I'm going to set native VLAN ID 929, set unit 0, family Ethernet switching interface mode, trunk, VLAN, members, bracket 2122, 2322, 2722, 2922, 3122, and whatever, storm control I don't really care about for this. So we look at that, and the configuration looks like the configuration of the interfaces. Then we just set the member interfaces, and it can be member GE-020, set member XE-020. So that range will now apply this configuration to both of those interfaces. So if I go out of this and delete GE020 and delete XE020, and you don't have to do this. The way that these kind of interface ranges work is that more specific always wins. So I delete them because I want to make sure that the interface range I'm about to use is actually going to be what's being used. And I'll show you how to verify that. Mostly I just want to show you that in the absence of that configuration, the interface ranges still do the job. So those two interfaces are deleted, but so if I do a show GE020, I won't see anything, but if I add pipe display inheritance, and I'm going to say no comments so I don't get the hash marks, you'll see that I have the same configuration. XC, same, top, we'll do a commit and quit. And this shouldn't change anything. The 10 gig link should still be up. And as I note over here in my notes on the side, we could use apply groups. It's kind of heavy-handed for this type of work. And I clearly need to redo the synchronization here. You can ignore that. That's for something else I was doing earlier. Should have cleared it out, but I really want to get this video done, so I'm going to focus on that for now. Show interfaces thirst XE020. You can see that it's still up. All right, so those are the different ways that you can kind of reduce the amount of time it takes or even eliminate it altogether if you're doing a pre-configuration for swapping a 1 gig interface with a 10 gig interface.